your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us this Saturday, October the 25th. Some ominous words Wednesday evening from Prime Minister Mark Carney. In a televised speech to university students in Ottawa, Carney made it clear Canada's relationship with the United States is about to change dramatically.
This decades-long process of an ever closer economic relationship with the United States is now over. And as a consequence, many of our former strengths as a country, former strengths more particularly as our economy, strengths based on close ties to America, have become our vulnerabilities. And as a result of that, the jobs of workers in our industries most affected by the U.S. tariffs in autos, in steel, in lumber are under threat. And our businesses are holding back investments restrained by the pall of uncertainty that's hanging over all of us. Our relationship with the United States will never again be the same as it was. Our goal for Canada is to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next decade, generating more than $300 billion more in trade, and that's new orders for Canadian resources, technologies, and expertise. The upcoming budget will balance the operating deficit in 3 years by reducing wasteful government spending and doing more with less. The fact is that federal spending has been growing over the course of the last decade by more than 7% year over year. We've been spending faster than our economy was growing. So we have to change that, and our government is changing that.
Carney also framed his government's upcoming budget as one that will spur unprecedented levels of private sector investment and unleash a building spree. His fiscal plan will be tabled on November the 4th. As you might expect, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre didn't think much of Carney's address. Poilievre says it's ironic that Carney talks of doubling Canada's non-U.S. exports within a decade while not yet addressing any of the Liberal regulations or laws that have prevented that from already happening.
But instead of saying, given that things are so bad, we Liberals are going to reverse course on all of the policies of inflation, of blocking home building, of standing in the way of resource projects. Instead of that, he asked young people to make more sacrifices. This was the sacrifice speech to Canadian youth. And he said it's going to take lots of time to reverse all the damage. Mr. Carney, our youth have sacrificed enough. All they have done for the last 10 years is sacrifice. They are living in their parents' basement well into their 30s. Their rent has roughly doubled, and in fact the most recent inflation data says that it's up another 4%. The purchasing power of their paychecks are down. More of their money goes to taxes than into food, clothing and shelter combined. They are no longer safe on their streets after Liberal bail has unleashed crime and chaos everywhere.
The federal government introduced legislation with tougher bail and sentencing rules on Thursday. Justice Minister Sean Fraser says the legislation would make bail more difficult to get for violent and organized crime offences.
We heard directly from police organizations and from provincial governments in particular that reverse onuses should be introduced at bail for certain serious crimes. In most bail hearings, prosecutors must demonstrate a person should be detained before a court denies them bail. A reverse onus flips that rule, meaning the accused must convince the court that they should be released. This bill adds new reverse onus provisions for certain serious offences, including things like home invasion, auto theft, human smuggling and human trafficking, violent extortion, certain instances of assault and sexual assaults, and repeat violent crime with a weapon. We are also imposing a reverse onus on someone who has been convicted of crime and is awaiting sentencing. We have seen, sadly, tragedies play out in this country, including crimes committed by people who have been found guilty, but who are not yet incarcerated.
This new law would also allow for consecutive sentences for violent and repeat offenders, so multiple sentences could not be served at the same time. In federal politics, there was a meeting of the minds Thursday in Ottawa. Prime Minister Mark Carney met privately with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre to talk about the Liberal government's upcoming budget. This came as Carney was also set to reveal some of the thinking behind the federal budget when he gave a speech in front of a group of university students that same evening. Ottawa has signaled that the November 4th budget will include spending restraint measures and new spending on major initiatives. Speaking of Poilievre, the Liberals, Greens and NDP want him to apologize for accusing the RCMP of covering up for former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Poilievre recently claimed in a podcast interview that Trudeau could have been charged criminally for accepting a vacation from the Aga Khan, adding that the former PM would be in jail if not for the RCMP. Poilievre called it despicable. On Parliament Hill, Conservative MPs were asked if they support their leader.
I think that Pierre Poilievre has tremendous support from caucus, tremendous support from Canadians. We're really excited to see what's going to be coming. But at the end of the day, this is like, a little out of context things from a podcast is really not the biggest priority for us.
Do you have confidence?
Ask me about the opioid crisis, how that is like the leading cause of death for youth.
So then why does your leader talks about the RCMP?
Why don't you ask me about that?
Why does your leader talks about that?
Of course I support the leader, and he's going to be an incredible Prime Minister.
He's a strong leader defending men and women in uniform, and I frankly will take no lessons from the Liberals on standing up for frontline officers. Our party is defending the work police officers do, that when people are arrested, when they're committing crimes, repeat violent offenders, they should be in jail, not out on bail. We've given the government a chance to adopt our jail not bail legislation, so we're standing up for.
But do you think the RCMP is despicable?
We're not taking any lessons from the Liberals.
But do you trust our
party?
Should Mr. Trudeau be in jail? Should Mr. Trudeau be in jail? Should Justin Trudeau be in jail?
And I support our leader.
Later that day, Poilievre had this to say when asked by reporters.
Do you still think the RCMP covered it up?
My criticisms of Ms. Lucky have been long-standing, and that's why we called for her to resign. We called for her to resign for a number of numerous scandals that she and the RCMP failed to investigate, for the political interference, the appalling political interference in the Portapique shooting case, and countless others. We've had long-standing criticisms of Ms. Lucky, the former commissioner, and we stand by those criticisms.
The fall session of the 31st Alberta Legislature opened on Thursday with a speech from the throne. Lieutenant Governor Salma Lakhani outlined the government's plans to introduce policies she says will strengthen health care, improve classrooms, protect freedoms, and advance nation-building projects. The government reaffirmed its pledge to defend and exercise its constitutional jurisdiction against federal overreach while continuing to expand relations with U.S. counterparts. Alberta plans to partner with First Nations and industries to build new pipelines to Canada's West Coast and southeastern Ontario. Lakhani also spoke about Alberta's sovereignty and independence.
Sovereignty does not mean separation. Strength and self-determination do not have to mean national independence. And one can love this province with all their heart and love our nation just as much. In fact, it is your government's view that both Canada and Alberta can only succeed when a proper constitutional balance has been restored and Alberta is empowered to freely pursue its full potential, while Ottawa focuses its efforts on key areas of federal jurisdiction.
The government says after touring the province, the Alberta Next panel is now drafting a report with recommendations as to what initiatives are worth pursuing immediately to strengthen Alberta's sovereignty within Canada and which initiatives should be put to a referendum. But it says it will be Albertans who will ultimately make that choice. After the throne speech, Premier Danielle Smith announced the first piece of legislation to be introduced will be Bill 1, the International Agreements Act.
Ottawa can sign international agreements with other countries. That's their right. But this legislation, it makes it clear that those agreements will only become enforceable in Alberta if implemented under provincial legislation. Since the federal election, I've met with Prime Minister Mark Carney several times. I've told him the same thing every time, that Confederation works best when Ottawa respects the Constitution and provincial authority. And we have made our position clear. Work with us and we'll get things done. Overstep and Alberta will stand its ground.
Now, some shocking news this week regarding gambling and professional basketball. Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and more than 30 others were arrested, accused of participating in schemes involving illegal sports betting and rigged poker games backed by the mafia.
What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Casa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families.
One example occurred on March 23rd, 2023 in Charlotte. Terry Rozier, an NBA player now with the Miami Heat, but at the time playing for the Hornets, allegedly let others close to him know that he planned to leave the game early with a supposed injury. Using that information, members of the group placed more than $200,000 in wagers on his under statistics. Rozier exited the game after just 9 minutes, and those bets paid out, generating tens of thousands of dollars in profit.
A statement from the NBA Players Association says the integrity of the game is paramount to NBA players, but so is the presumption of innocence, and both are hindered when player popularity is misused to gain attention. We will ensure our members are protected and afforded their due rights through this process, end quote. Albertans went to the polls in droves considering municipal elections. We will discuss the results after this break. Welcome back. We continue our updates concerning municipal elections. Blaine Higgin will be back for a second term as mayor of Lethbridge. With the results now official, with all 20 polls reporting and following an audit correction, Higgin came out with over 7,300 votes, about 900 more than second place finisher Ryan Meny. Higgin received nearly 43% of the 17,100 votes that were cast. Blaine Higgin was first elected to council in 2013 after a successful re-election in 2017 and 2 terms as a councillor. He's won the race for mayor's chair in 2021, becoming the city's 16th mayor, succeeding Chris Spearman. Following the announcement of his re-election, Higgin addressed the media about what he's looking forward to in his next term.
I want to begin by expressing my deepest gratitude to every resident who participated in the election. Your involvement is what obviously strengthens our democracy. I also want to acknowledge the election staff and the countless workers who have assisted in this democratic process. It's an honor. It's been an honor to serve 12 years, 8 as council, 4 as mayor, and to continue this these next 4 years. I think not even new things come forward, but what we've heard and we want to continue with is public safety. We've heard loud and clear. It's probably the top thing still at the doors as it was last time, public safety, but we've done some incredible work. We've heard that we're had the 3rd largest crime severity index drop in all of Canada. It comes with folks getting involved and helping and helping support us as we continue to do the work that the citizens want.
At one point during his address, Higgin showed some emotion when thanking all candidates who ran during these elections. He later went on to respond to what he says has been threats and language directed at him, his family, and his colleagues during this election period.
And I want to ask you all to treat these individuals with the respect we all deserve. Whether you see them in person or you interact with them online, remember, guys, these are your fellow citizens.
As for city councillors, polls reported over 93,000 ballots as of airtime to elect 8 candidates to City Hall. The top 8 in descending order includes Belinda Croson, Jen Schmidt-Rempel, Reiko Dodick, Ryan Wolf, Al Bieber, Rufa Doria, Mark Campbell, and Ryan Parker. Results for the municipal and school elections became official Friday afternoon. The swearing-in ceremony for mayor-elect and council-elect will be held this coming Monday. We should also mention that Lindsay Clark has been re-elected as mayor of Medicine Hat. She beat out former Conservative MLA Drew Barnes by 752 votes. And it was a somber day for the city of Lethbridge and members of Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services. A funeral service was held for retired fire captain Mike Stevens at the Trade and Convention Center on Thursday. Stevens served with LFES from 1976 to 2011, being named lieutenant in 2004 and captain in 2007. Stevens passed away on October the 6th at the age of 74 from cancer. He's remembered for being a humble leader and a caring friend.
He was a mentor, a friend, a steady presence in the fire hall, who truly cared about the profession. He loved the job. He loved the guys and the gals. He was one of the most intelligent men I'd ever worked with. His knowledge of the fire service was second to none, but he never made you feel small for not knowing something. Even in his retirement, Mike remained a cherished part of our fire family, and his line-of-duty death is a solemn reminder of the risks that our firefighters and paramedics face and the courage it takes to live a life of service.
LFES says his example in leadership continues to play a pivotal role in influencing their members today. When people feel unsafe, are threatened, or witness an attack, the key to safety is knowing how to react. With that in mind, as part of the Week Without Violence, the Lethbridge YWCA hosted a bystander intervention training. Leah Webster, sexual and gender-based violence prevention coordinator and trainer from the University of Lethbridge, shares 5 key steps to help others stay safe.
We talk about the 5 Ds of being a bystander that intervenes. So those things are like being direct. So when we see something, we call it out. Delegating. So if we're not comfortable to step in, we're talking to somebody else that might be more comfortable to step in. Delaying, which is maybe we're not comfortable stepping in that moment, but we can connect with that person after and say, like, how are you? Is there anything I can do to support you? Documenting. So again, if you're not the one fully stepping in and intervening, but you're documenting what's happening, who you saw, what you saw, if somebody else is also intervening. Distract. So intervening in that moment and, causing a distraction or connecting with people to change what's happening in that moment and just making a distraction. If you don't feel comfortable because your safety's at risk or you just have a boundary about that, it's really important that you call somebody else because the only thing that's the bad thing to do in being a bystander is not doing anything. So for example, if there's a large group of people all witnessing the same event, sometimes people will assume that somebody else will step in. So being able to recognize that it's okay to be the leader, it's okay to take charge in those situations and say, yeah, I'm gonna step in because other people will follow you.
The only way that domestic or sexual or gender-based violence is ever going to end is if we as a society make it stop. And that is by intervening, offering education or support about what we can do by calling it out, by intervening, and by demonstrating peaceful and healthy relationships in our own lives.
Canada's largest environmental charity just received a massive donation of grassland for permanent conservation. The Nature Conservancy of Canada, or NCC, received 507 hectares of property located in Lethbridge County along the Oldman River downstream from Lethbridge. The land is one of the largest remaining contiguous tracts of intact prairie grasslands in the area. Native grasslands filter water, store carbon, and provide vital habitat for wildlife, including dozens of at-risk species. Yet, they are disappearing at an alarming rate. The donor, Diane Glover, shown here on the left, says the donation is deeply personal. She says the land, which has been in her family for 3 generations, will honor the memory of her parents, siblings, and grandparents. Spokesperson for the NCC, Sean Fagan, says the conserved land will provide a permanent home for prairie species.
Unfortunately, many of our prairie species are in decline. There was a report last month about the state of Canadian wildlife, and it concluded that prairie wildlife are the fastest declining groups in Canada, having declined by 62% since 1970. And this mirrors a report from last year, termed the State of Canada's Birds Report, and that also found that grassland birds are the fastest declining.
Contributions were also made by the Government of Canada through the Natural Heritage Conservation Program, which is part of Canada's Nature Fund. Donors and partners also helped, including Cenovus Energy, as part of their Conserving Critical Wetlands program. 7 Lethbridge Police Service officers are being recognized for their efforts to keep Alberta roadways safe. The Corporal Cummings Watch Awards honors officers involved in detecting and removing impaired drivers. The program was established in memory of Corporal Graham Cumming, an RCMP officer killed by an impaired driver in 1998. The award was presented by Anita Huchala, president of the Lethbridge and Area chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
So Constable Paxman achieved the highest this year in the province of Alberta by removing 94 impaired drivers off of the roadways here in the city of Lethbridge. It is out there, and we see that the impact that it has on many families. So when they've lost a loved one or somebody is injured, it impacts them. And it doesn't just impact the immediate family. You can see how it affects a whole community when somebody is killed by an impaired driver. We have more means available to the officers to detect it, where before they did not have those devices in order to detect impaired drivers under the influence of cannabis. Sometimes is that they make a poor decision. They don't set out to necessarily kill or injure anybody, but they're making that poor decision that they don't want to leave their vehicle somewhere. They want to make sure they get home. They may have to work the next morning, so they don't want to be without their vehicle. There's a number of reasons why. Maybe they feel they won't get caught. I don't know. The fact is that the officers are out there trying to do their job and detect those impaired drivers before they do cause a crash.
According to MAD, 9 federal criminal charges and provincial short-term license suspensions are handed out every hour in Canada for alcohol or drug-impaired driving. While waste reduction is something people should practice all year round, the city of Lethbridge marked this week as Waste Reduction Week. The week is dedicated to educating the community about reducing waste and building habits around recycling and repurposing materials such as construction debris, textiles, e-waste, plastics, and food. Ashley Cowie, Infrastructure, Education, and Outreach Lead, talks about the activities that took place as part of Waste Reduction Week.
We have some programs that are year-round that feed into Waste Reduction Week and Circular Economy, like our Blue Cart recycling program, our Green Cart Organics program, our different drop-off locations for community members to properly divert their waste away from the landfill. So, for example, tomorrow, Thursday, October 23rd, from 1 until 4, we have a compost giveaway at the visitlethbridge.com arena parking lot. On Saturday, October 25th, Environment Lethbridge is hosting a repair cafe at the public library downtown, where you have the opportunity to come and fix household items rather than disposing of them or throwing them in the garbage. Rent items that we maybe don't use all the time, but rather than buying it, sharing them. We want to leave it better for the next generation. We want to be able to have a place where our families can continue to grow, that are safe and that are green. And so the understanding of proper waste diversion, the understanding of recycling, reusing materials, it just leads to, again, those small steps that lead to a much, much bigger action and huge impact.
And by the way, plastics of any kind can interfere with the organics recycling process. Plastic bags and containers should never go in the green cart, even if they say they are compostable or biodegradable. Public Safety Minister Gary Anandasangri was caught on tape admitting that legal gun owners are not the problem when it comes to gun violence. So why is the Liberal government going through this multi-million-dollar gun buyback program? Scott Sweetman from the Lethbridge Fish and Game Association joins us to talk about this controversial issue coming up next. And if you're watching us online, that full interview is available on our YouTube channel.